Hey guys, welcome back to Jeeping. Today we're going to be installing an axle U-joint on my Jeep Cherokee right here. A way you can tell that U-joints go bad is you'll have some vibrations at different speeds. Mine the steering wheel used to shake at 55 through 60 miles an hour. So today we're going to be replacing it with the Spicer U-joint. Inside the kit it comes with your 4 clips in a bag here and the U-joint, and we're basically going to have to press this in onto the axle shaft. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is take the wheel off. I'm going to start and break these free when the wheel's still on the ground, so that way it doesn't turn. I'm using a 19mm socket right here. I'll go ahead and break these free. Okay, so now that we got the wheel off, the next step would be to take the brake caliper off, and to do that there's 2 bolts right behind here. I think they're a 1/2 inch. And if you're having trouble getting them off, spray some PB Blaster or other penetrating oil. That should help break them free. I don't think we'll need any heat at all. They're pretty easy on the other side, so we'll go ahead and get that done. Just giving these bolts some PB Blaster before I go ahead and start wrenching on them. Alright, that's 2. Now I should be able to pull off the brake caliper. If it doesn't like to come off right away, you might, like this did, you might want to compress the piston so you get more clearance. Now we're just going to get this out of the way. So put on the lower control arm here, because you don't want that hanging by the brake line. You don't want to snap that, that'll be bad. Okay, now we can easily get the rotor off, but I'm actually going to take this axle nut off first. And then we'll be able to hold it in place while we take it off. I'll have a screwdriver going through the rotor right here, and then this should be able to stop it, so that way it doesn't keep turning when you try to break it free. So looks like we got a cotter pin holding this in place, so we'll go ahead and get that off first. There we go. And then there's a little cap on here, and then a little washer. You want to make sure you have that. Don't want to lose that. Next, we're going to take this axle nut off. Again, I'm going to use some PB Blaster. And then when I was buying U-joints, I went ahead and bought a 36mm socket right here, and that fits right over here. I didn't have one before. I'm going to take a screwdriver, stick it in the rotor so now it can't turn. Next, take my breaker bar and try to break this free. Alright. Now inside here there's another washer. You gotta be careful with that so you don't lose it. Might be hard to get it out now, but once you take the axle, or the hub off actually, it should come out easily. So now we can take off the rotor. Now our next process is going to be taking off the actual hub. There's 3 bolts, one up here, one on the side, one on the other side. I think they are 13mm 12 point, and these ones are kind of hard to get out. You want to make sure you lube them up really well. And another thing I've noticed, that there's some threads sticking out on the other side. What I had to do on the other side to get them out to help it out. Took a wire brush to clean up the threads because that stuff go back through the hub, and you wouldn't want the threads getting all clogged up with rust and snapping the bolt, and that'll just be a headache of a day. But so we're gonna go ahead and clean up the threads and lubricate it and try and get these guys off. All right, so this is a closer look up at the hub bolts. You can see it's just caked in rust right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my wire brush and make sure to clean that all up before I go ahead and undo these bolts. Alright, another tip you can do is actually turn the steering wheel to get whatever leverage you need to get these bolts out. So that's what I'm going to be doing with this side, so I'm just going to turn the wheel left. This side I can't put my body weight on it. Pull it. Alright, so now we got all 3 hub bolts out, and if you're lucky, you should be able just to pull out the hub, but I'm not. So basically we gotta separate the hub from the knuckle because there's a bunch of surface area that they both bond together that you just rust up. So what I'm gonna do is take a putty knife and try to wedge it in between the two with a hammer and see if I can push it apart. Alright, so I think it's separated it from the dust plate here, so I'm just going to try hammering it out. There we go. So now we got the hub out. Make sure you don't lose that washer. Remember how the backing plate goes back on? Set that aside. Now we should be able to pull out our axle shaft. Careful not to ruin that seal that's in there. Alright, so now we can take the U-joint to the workbench and replace it. Alright, so I got the axle shaft out of the Jeep and clamped down to the table. The reason for that is because, I don't know if you can see from here, I broke my vise trying to press out the other side U-joint. So I'm going to have to work with this and try to hammer out the U-joint. But first thing you need to do is you need to pound out these clips that are in the inside of the U-joint here. And it's kind of hard to see on mine because it's just caked in grease, but you need to see where they start and just take either a screwdriver or a punch and just hammer them out. And yeah, this U-joint doesn't seem to be too bad because it still moves nice and freely, but my other side was pretty bad. All the needle bearings were all rusted up, so hopefully I'm able to get this one out better. Now in taking the axle shaft out, you don't need to open up your differential cover or anything like that. It's 830, it's not C-clip axle, so these just slide right out. Alright, so that's one of the clips after wiping off all the grease. But you can see they just slide into this tiny groove between the yoke and the U-joint right here. So there's going to be 4 of them, 1 on each joint. Alright, so now that I got all the 4 clips out, we can go ahead and start removing the U-joint from the yoke. There's a few ways you can do it. You can either get a C-clamp. There's a special tool. It's basically a C-clamp that has special ends on there so you can press it out. You can also use a vise, like what I did last time, and basically use a bigger socket on one end and smaller on the other to drive the U-joint right out. But I can't do that since I cracked my vise. So the third option is I'm going to pound these out with a hammer. Basically just going to have a bigger socket on the bottom here, fit this on top, and just hammer this down into there until it pops out. Alright, so I went ahead and got the U-joint all pounded out. I went ahead and cleaned up some of the grease, and what I'm going to do so that the new one fits a lot better is just going to wire brush in the inside here, and then I'm going to take some grease so it helps slide in. That U-joint wasn't too bad. There's only one rusted side. You can see it's all the needle bearings are falling out and it's all rusty, so good thing we changed that. Alright, so I got the brand new U-joint all hammered in. I didn't get any film of me actually hammering it, but basically when you put it in, you want to do one yoke at a time, obviously, but you want to remove each cap and make sure not to mess up any of the needle bearings. And then you want to slide in the U-joint and then tap in one side with a hammer and then tap in the other side, and then keep doing it until you're able to fit your clips in. And those should fit in the groove right in here. And then once you get that side done, you would do the other yoke. So now we can go ahead and reassemble and put this back in the Jeep. Alright, so now we're basically going to assemble it the same way as we took it out. Except that, like, on all the mating surfaces, in case I ever do have to take this apart again, since I don't have any anti-seize, I'm using just some multi-purpose grease just to get on the contact surfaces. Not too much, you know, just a thin little coat so that nothing rusts. Alright, so now we can slide back in our axle seal. I went ahead and lubed it up with some oil so I don't tear that seal that's in there. Now you just want to push it in. There we go. So now we can put our dust shield and hub back on. Be sure it went like that. Line up the holes and then we can put our bolts back in. It'll be a good time to put some anti-seize or a little coat of grease on these bolts so they don't give you a hard time next time you want to take this out. Alright, so I got all three of those bolts threaded in, and the torque specs to tighten these down is 75 foot-pounds. So I got my torque wrench right here. I just got to tighten up. Alright, so now with all three hub bolts all torqued down, we can go ahead and put our axle bolt back in. Make sure to get that washer in there first. And then I'm going to put the rotor on. That way it would help locking the axle when I go and torque it down. There you go. Okay. Stick the screwdriver right there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and torque this down. They say about 175 pounds. You want to make sure you don't really crank on it because sometimes your hub bearings will go bad if you really tighten it up. Okay. Back off. Now we can put our little cover back on, make sure not to forget this. Then we're going to take our cotter pin. This one still looks alright to use, not too rusty. You want to push this cap back. Yeah, that's that. Now all we got to do is put the rotor on, the brake caliper, then the wheel, then we should be done. Now on the brake rotor, you want to make sure you clean off the surface if you have greasy hands like I did, because otherwise you won't be able to stop. You want a nice dry surface, so I'm just going to use some rubbing alcohol with that. Okay, so now we're going to try and see if we can slide the caliper back on. Make sure you don't get the brake line twisted at all. Alright, there we go. Now all we gotta do is just put the wheel on, and that's it. Alright guys, we're done. I went ahead and got the wheel back on and tightened down all the bolts in a circular pattern down to 100 foot-pounds. If you have any questions, please make sure to comment below and like this video if it helped you, and check out Jeeping on YouTube and subscribe for more how-to videos.